She rehearsed it several times more. Then she ran downstairs, took her coat, went out the back door, down the garden, into the street. It wasn't 6 o'clock yet, and the lights were still on in the grocery shop. "Hello, Sam," she said brightly, smiling at the man behind the counter. "Good evening, Mrs. Maloney. How are you?" "I want some potatoes, please, Sam. Yes, and I think a can of peas." The man turned and reached up behind him on the shelf for the peas. "Patrick's decided he's tired and doesn't want to eat out tonight," she told him. "We usually go out on Thursday, you know, and now he's caught me without any vegetables in the house." "And how about the meat, Mrs. Maloney?" "No, I've got meat, thanks. I've got a nice leg of lamb from the freezer." "Oh, I don't much like cooking it from frozen, Sam, but I'm taking a chance on it this time. You think it'll be all right?" "Personally, I don't believe it makes any difference. You want these Idaho potatoes?" "Yes, that'll be fine. 2 of those." "Anything else?" The grocer cocked his head one side, looking at her pleasantly. "How about afterwards? What you going to give him for afterwards?" "Well, what would you suggest, Sam?" The man glanced around his shop. How about this nice big slice of cheesecake? I know how he likes that." "Perfect," she said. "He loves it." And when it was all wrapped and she had paid, she put on her brightest smile and said, "Thank you, Sam. Good night." "Good night, Mrs. Maloney, and thank you." And now she told herself as she hurried back, all she was doing now, she was returning home to her husband, and he was waiting for his supper, and she must cook it good and make it as tasty as possible, because the poor man was tired of. And if, when she entered the house, she happened to find anything unusual or tragic or terrible, then naturally it would be a shock, and she'd become frantic with grief and horror. Mind you, she wasn't expecting to find anything. She just was going home with the vegetables. Mrs. Patrick Maloney going home with the vegetables on Thursday evening to cook supper for her husband. That's the way she told herself. Do everything right and natural. Keep things absolutely natural, and there'll be no need for acting at all. Therefore, when she entered the kitchen by the back door, she was humming a little to herself and smiling. "Patrick, how are you doing, darling?" She put the parcel down on the table and went through into the living room. And when she saw him lying there on the floor with his legs doubled up and one arm twisted back underneath his body, it really was rather a shock. All the old love and longing for him welled up inside her, and she ran over to him, knelt down beside him, and began to cry her heart out. It was easy. No acting was necessary. A few minutes later, she got up and went to the phone. She knew the number of the police station, and when the man on the other end answered, she cried to him, "Quick! Quick! God, come quick! Patrick's dead!" "Who's speaking?" "Mrs. Mahoney. Mrs. Patrick Mahoney." "You mean Patrick Mahoney's dead?" "I think so. He's lying on the floor, and I think he's dead." "Be right over, ma'am. Be right over." The car came very quickly, and when she opened the front door, 2 policemen walked in. She knew them both. She knew nearly all the men in that precinct, and she fell right into Jack Noonan's arms, weeping hysterically. He put her gently into a chair and then went over to join the other, who called O'Malley, kneeling by the body. "Is he dead?" "I'm afraid he is." "What happened?" Briefly, she told her story about going out to the grocer and coming back to find him on the floor. While she was talking, crying, and talking, Noonan discovered a small patch of congealed blood on the dead man's head. He showed it to O'Malley, who got up at once and hurried to the phone. Soon other men began to come into the house, first a doctor, then 2 detectives, one of whom she knew by name. Later, a photographer arrived and took pictures, and a man who knew about fingerprints. Oh, there was a great deal of whispering and muttering beside the corpse, and the detectives kept asking her a lot of questions, but they always treated her kindly. She told her story again, this time right from the beginning, when Patrick had come in and she was sewing, and he was tired, so tired he hadn't wanted to go out for supper. She told how she put the meat in the oven. It's there now, cooking. And how she had slipped out to the grocer for vegetables and come back to find him lying on the floor. "Which grocer?" one of the detectives asked. She told him, and he turned and whispered something to the other detective, who immediately went outside into the street. In 15 minutes he was back with pages of notes, and there was more whispering, and through her sobbing she heard a few of the whispered phrases. "Acted quite normal.